Is the United States seeking to tear Canada apart? Fresh reports indicating that Canadian separatists have been meeting American officials. They are reportedly seeking money from Washington to help fund a breakaway country. And these reports have alarmed Canada, which is already dealing with increasing pressure from US President Donald Trump. A report in the Financial Times says that the leaders of a Canadian separatist group called the Alberta Prosperity Project have been holding meetings with senior US officials. And the separatists have met Trump administration officials as many as 3 times since April last year. Reportedly, they plan to meet again in February. The Canadian separatists reportedly want to sit down with the US state and treasury officials next month. Their goal is to try and get a $500 billion credit facility from the US. They want to use this credit line to bankroll Alberta if it decides to secede from Canada. Alberta, Canada's 4th largest province by area, the 4th most populated. It's home to about 5 million people. But what makes it special is that it's Canada's leading oil producer. In fact, the Alberta Prosperity Project wants to hold a referendum, reportedly. They want the people there to vote on whether to remain in Canada or to become a separate sovereign nation. The separatists are currently trying to gather 178,000 signatures in a petition, which would force Alberta to hold the vote. And if they were to secure a funding commitment from the US, it may convince more people there that secession is actually viable. Alberta has had a small separatist movement since the 1930s, in fact. The movement has seen periods of traction and decline through the decades, but it has not held a referendum so far. Only Canada's French-speaking Quebec province has held secession referendums in the past, in 1980 and 1995. Quebec separatists lost both times, but reports say the Albertan separatists have reached out to the leaders of the Quebec referendum to learn from their mistakes. And that is because they believe that the time is ripe to get Alberta to secede from Canada. And the latest boost for Alberta's separatist movement coming after the 2025 general election with the victory of Mark Carney and the Liberal Party. Alberta has been a conservative bastion for years now. And the Liberal Party, extending its 10 years in power, brought renewed calls for Alberta to chart its own course. The separatist group Alberta Prosperity Project reportedly met US officials for the first time in April last year. That's the month of the general election when the Liberal Party returned to power. The separatists plan to meet American officials again in February, reportedly just days after the latest tensions between Trump and the Canadian Prime Minister. Remember, Trump recently threatened Canada with 100% tariffs if it signs a trade agreement with China. And on Thursday, he also threatened a separate 50% tariff on Canadian aircraft. Mark Carney drew Trump's ire during the World Economic Forum in Davos. Remember, Carney made global headlines for his speech at the summit, where he indirectly blamed Trump for the end of the post-World War II global order. And he has been facing regular threats from Trump ever since. We've been telling you about that. And Carney was asked about the Albertan separatists meeting the US officials. This is how he responded to that.
We expect the U.S. administration to respect Canadian sovereignty. I'm always clear in my conversation with President Trump to that effect, and then move on to what we can do together.
I'd like to ask, in those conversations, has he ever raised the prospect of Alberta or Quebec separation?
No.
So far, reports say that the U.S. is not planning to bankroll the Albertan separatists. However, last week, the U.S. Treasury Secretary hinted that he was supporting the referendum initiative. He said, quoting, Albertans are very independent people and that they wanted what the U.S. has, quote unquote. Will this seemingly tacit support actually turn into a real financial commitment is the question, or is this just a way for the Trump administration to play Canadians against each other while it pursues its own agenda? A deep silence has fallen over fields and forests across the planet, and scientists are saying it's no good news. Insects, the tiny engines of our planet's ecosystems, are mysteriously falling silent, and that silence is being heard as a stark warning for humanity's future.
For decades, the buzz of insects was a constant, but across the globe, the biological engine of the earth is seizing up. The buzzing, chirping and humming that once filled summer skies is fading. Beetles, butterflies, bees, moths and other critters are vanishing at alarming rates around the world. Scientists say this silence is not normal. It's a red flag. What we are witnessing may signal systematic ecological strain that could ripple all the way to human survival. Insects aren't just background noise. They are foundational to life on Earth. More than 70% of our crops from apples to almonds rely at least in part on insect pollination. They are the first link in most terrestrial and freshwater food chains, feeding birds, reptiles, fish and mammals. Without them, those chains fray and the entire ecosystem stutter. A long-term study tracking flying insect biomass in protected areas found populations had fallen by more than 75% by 2016. Projections suggest that by 2030, as many as a quarter of all insect species could be lost. Scientists are not certain exactly why this is happening everywhere, but habitat loss, pesticides, climate change, and light pollution are all implicated. The alarm is not just about bugs. It's about the collapse of underlying natural processes that sustain food, biodiversity, and climate stability. The silence of insects could be the first sign of deeper ecological strain, one that ultimately affects human health, food security, and global economies. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Moving on, Donald Trump is taking his own government to court. Trump, two of his eldest sons and the Trump Organization filed a lawsuit against the IRS and the Treasury Department. He is seeking $10 billion in damages over allegedly leaking confidential tax returns. And the legal action was filed in a federal court in Miami. The complaint claims that government agencies did not take adequate steps to prevent a former internal revenue service contractor from leaking tax returns reportedly. And according to the court documents, Trump is suing in a personal capacity rather than as a president. The case basically centering on former IRS contractor Charles Littlejohn. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison in 2024 after pleading guilty to leaking Trump's tax records to the New York Times. Trump's tax returns were the focus of speculation during his first term in office, remember. In the year 2020, the New York Times reported that Trump paid just $750 in federal income taxes in 2016 and 2017. And Trump dismissed the report as fake and said the information was illegally obtained. Littlejohn also admitted to stealing tax records of thousands of wealthy individuals, including Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, reportedly. Now, the filed lawsuit says that the IRS and U.S. Treasury Department had a duty to safeguard and protect their confidential tax returns. It claims that the leak caused financial harm, public embarrassment, unfairly tarnished their business reputations, portrayed them in a false light, and negatively affected public standing of President Trump, his sons, and his organization. This is not the first time that Trump has taken legal action against the federal government he oversees. The New York Times reporting that Trump has sought $230 million in damages from the U.S. Department of Justice. The claim relates to investigations into his handling of classified documents and efforts to overturn the results of the 2020 election. Since returning to office, Trump has filed multiple lawsuits, often against media organizations, demanding billions of dollars. He sued the BBC last year over edits to a January 6 speech clip. He also sued the Wall Street Journal and Rupert Murdoch over reporting links to Jeffrey Epstein. Other lawsuits include a $5 billion case against JP Morgan Chase and its CEO. To stay up to speed with the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.